Welcome to this video as we continue building a RemindMeApp application using Kivy. In the previous part of this series, we established the building blocks of our application, tab panels and tab items. The end result was a tab panel winget that manages different winget in tabs. Today, we will handle one of the tab items, the AddReminder item. This item permits us to add reminder to our application and save them in the database. This is the end result. Alright, so this is how the AddReminder UI looks like. We have here three fields that represent the hours, the minute, and the second. So we can go ahead and provide, let's say we want to set a reminder at 1 o'clock or 1:30. We can also provide the seconds here. And next thing we can do is to select the days. We want it to be triggered on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we can select if we want it to repeat, okay, to the next weeks. And once we have that, this will be indicated here. We can select if we want a pop-up or sound or both, but in this case I'm going to leave the sound. And here we can select the sound we want to play, so I'm going to select this. And also here we can give the name of the event, let's say break time. And we can see as all the required fields are filled, the submit button is activated, so we can go ahead and submit it. And we can also reset in this case. So another interesting thing is that here at the level of the label, as we type, it decrements here to tell us how many characters we have left. So at the end, if we exhaust everything, then we can no longer enter any character. We can only reduce it. And lastly, we can go ahead and reset everything. All right. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment to support the channel. Code with M. In the first video of this series, we designed our RemindMeApp application, and this is what we had. But after some serious considerations, I had to go in for something else. And here we are, the new design for our AddReminder UI. So in this video, I'm going to show you how this was implemented. So this is the interface we had from the previous video, and right now we are at the home page. If we click on this plus icon here, it takes us to the AddReminder user interface. All right, so basically it is empty right now, but let's see how we can fit this into this. All right, to work on the AddReminder item section, we need to go to the views. From the views, we go to the AddReminder item folder, and there we're going to see two files. We have the AddReminder Kivy language file and the Python file. So at the level of the Kivy file, we can see we have this from the previous video. All right, so basically this is referenced in the base, okay, the base Kivy language. We can see this define the base panel, and the base panel contains the different panel items. So we can see here, somewhere here, we have the AddReminder item. All right, okay, so here in Kivy, when we use this angle bracket, it means that we want to either define or expand winget rules. All right, so this winget is defined somewhere else. Is defined in the Python file. We can see it at this level. It inherits the tab panel item, and here we just want to expand it. Okay, so whatever we saw in this interface is what we have here. So we are going to change this. Okay, the first thing I'm going to change is the box item, the previous box item that we had here. I don't like to use box item so much. This is because create item for me, I think, is the best, because I can easily control the child wingets using columns and rows. So the first thing I'm going to do here is that I'm going to use a create layout, and the create layout has rows and column property. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to have just one column, because if we go to the diagram again, so all of this is going to be placed in a base winget. Okay, going to be placed in a base winget. And the base winget in my case here is going to be the create layout, and because it is a base winget, it's going to define only one column. And I'm going to set a default height for all my children, all my child wingets, and I'm going to use 50 dp. Okay, and I'm going to use spacing to give spacing for all my winget. And we'll realize that spacing is a bit different from the box layout. Okay, so spacing in box layout uses just one value, while spacing in grid layout uses two values, the horizontal value and the vertical value. So what we are saying is that we want to control the space between child wingets inside the layout. So in this case, we're going to use 10 horizontally and 10 vertically. Same with padding. Padding controls space around all child wingets. Okay, and here it takes also two values, and we're gonna have 5 and 5. So padding here is padding and spacing are measured in pixels. So this is gonna be our base winget. We can run it at this level to see what we have. Basically, we're gonna have nothing. It's gonna be empty. Let's see how we can start fitting all the other wingets in that base winget. Okay, after having established our base wingets here, the next thing we want to do is to handle the first child winget, which is this part here. And we can see that this child winget has two columns. Okay, we can see the first column contains the label time, and the second column contains the label repeat. So, and also let's not forget the color. Okay, so let's see how we can fit this into this. Again, I'll use the grid layout. You can always use the box layout, okay, but I think the grid layout makes it very easy for me. And I'm just going to indicate here that this is the UI one. This is the first UI, the child UI, and it has two columns. So that's the first thing. It has two columns and it has labels. So two labels. The first one has the text time, and the second one has the text repeats. Okay, so let's run this and let's see what we have. Okay, so we have something like this. Okay, so let's now set the colors. Okay, to set the color, this is a winget. To set the color on this winget, we can use something called canvas. And basically in Kivy, canvas help us to draw shapes, colors, images, and other visual elements directly on our winget. And let's not forget that every winget also has its canvas, so we have to be very smart when we are setting these things. Okay, so just above here, I'm going to use the canvas, and because each winget has its own canvas, I want to make sure that I control this canvas that we are introducing so that it should not overlap or kind of like conflict with this other canvas here. And basically when we want to introduce a background, which is what we want to do, okay, we always want to use the canvas.before. And what this canvas.before does is that it draws the canvas, it draws this custom canvas before the winget's canvas. Sorry, this winget canvas. Okay, and this is basically what we use for backgrounds. We also have the canvas.after and the canvas itself, so they have different purposes. So here I'm going to use the canvas.before because I want to draw a background. And this canvas have many properties. The first one is the color, because we want to set the color. Okay, and the color is going to use the RGBA, and the RGBA here I'm going to use the hex color format. Okay, the hex color format. And to use the hex color format in Kivy, you need to import a package called util. Okay, and this is how we can do it. Import utils from Kivy utils. So once we have that imported, we can now use its get color from hex property to set a color. Okay, so we're gonna say utils dot get color from hex. All right, so and here we can now go ahead and give in the hex string or the hex color, and hex color or hex string colors, I don't know how to call it, start with hash and contain 6 characters. So I have a default color that I use already, and it's gonna be 4F, 4E, 4E. We can see it is easy to remember, right? This is to set a color. All right, so once we set the color, we want to use now the rectangle property to draw a rectangle shape using this color that we set above here. And this rectangle has 2 properties that we need to set. It has the position, which is going to be the winget's position, and it has the size, which is going to be the winget size. Basically what it does is that this is going to draw a rectangle using the color that we have set here, and this positioning and size just make sure that we can when we reshape this winget, this color is going to reshape alongside it. So basically just making sure that the position, the position of this canvas is the same as the position of this winget. Okay, so once we have that, we can go ahead and test it and see if it's gonna work. Okay, so I think I have some mistakes or some errors here, and it says the imports. I think the from here should not be there. All right, I thought I was in Python basically. All right, so let's go ahead and try it again, and that's it. Okay, all right, perfect. Let's move on to the next. All right, so on the other side we have the second column, and here we have one button that's going to take the entire space here. Here it's going to be a label that will display the number of days that we have selected when we click on this button, because this button is going to open a pop-up that contains days that we can select for our event to be triggered. And once we select those days, it's going to appear on this label space here. So let's see how we can fit this into this. All right, so I just went ahead and give them a label because this is going to be a lot of code, and for easily switch between, to easily identify the winget we want to change, we can easily reference this to our design. Okay, so the next one is going to be for the second column here, the second column. So it's going to go right here in line with this first column that we have here. So we're going to have a box layout. So I'm trying my best not to use box layout, but in cases where it is simpler to use box layout, I'm going to use box layout. Okay, so for this box layout, the box layout is going to contain two wingets. The first one is going to be the button at the top, and the second one is going to be the label down. Okay, so the orientation in this case is going to be vertical. Okay, vertical, since it moved from top to bottom. Okay, so the first one is going to be a button. We're going to have a button there, and the text on that button is this and this, just to indicate that this button opens in another winget or opens a pop-up. Okay, and the background color of this is going to be something dark. Okay, so I have already an image I have already a color prepared for that, so I can just put that here. Okay, we can change it if we want, but this is what we have for now. And the next winget, just below this button winget, we have a label winget, and the text here is going to be nothing for now. And yeah, I think the color also can be a little bit, I don't know, we can set the color here. Okay, and there's a difference between setting the color for the button and setting the color for a label. Okay, setting the color for the button, we can just use the background color, but when we're setting the color for the label, we must use the canvas. So in this case, I'm going to use the same thing that I used before, canvas before, and the color here is going to be RGB A, And let me just use the same color here. I don't know, but let me just see if it's gonna work. You know that for the button comes with some kind of dark color. Okay, I don't know if it's that the image behind the button, because if you want to remove that dark color, you have to do background normal, I think, and set this to empty like this. But if you remove this, then this button is going to have a dark light color. Okay, so that fits perfectly with the requirement, because I want this to look a little bit dark and this one a little bit lighter. Okay, so we're going to maintain the same color, and let's not forget the rectangle, and this one goes down, of course, and the size here, self size, and the position, self position. And now, after we have set the background, okay, we want to set now the color of the text that's going to be displayed here. Okay, and I have something already prepared. It is something reddish. Okay, something reddish, and I'm going to set the font size of this particular label to 18. Now you may be wondering, I already set a color here and I'm setting a color here as well. So please don't forget, here it kind of like set the background of that winget, and here it set the color of the font of the let's say of the text, just like we saw in the demo. Let's say we selected Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday, and let's see how it's going to be displayed. Let's go ahead and run it. Okay, we have some issues here, so probably I have to remove this comment here. I don't know if that's what is causing this indentation issue. All right, okay, so this is what we have. Perfect. So we can see here, even though they have the same color, the button and this level, this one looks dark compared to this, which is a little bit lighter. Okay, it's because of this normal background normal. So let me just do that real quick. Background normal, and see how it will look like. Okay, so we can see now they look alike, same color. So the next winget is this, but I decided to group these three wingets that we see here, this, and this, in one box layout. So we can see here it's gonna be in one box layout, and it's gonna have an orientation of vertical. Okay, and each row, in this case, let's say the first one is gonna have a grid layout with, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. The second one is gonna be a grid layout with 2 columns, and the third one is gonna be a grid layout with 2 columns as well. So let's see how we can fit all of this into this. All right, so here we're gonna put it around this area, in line with this line 21 that says UI2, because this is the second UI. Everything else here falls under this second UI, and after the second UI we have the third one, which is gonna be the box layout. And let me just put here, it's gonna be UI3. We can see it's easy to track now, right? And here we're gonna have an orientation of vertical, and because it contains so many child wingets, we're gonna increase the height a little bit. Let's increase the height to 80 dp, just to be, just to test and see if it's gonna work. And the thing about Kivy is that for height to work, we need to make sure that we set the size hint Y to none. Okay, and once we have that, the height will work perfectly. Okay, so after the box layout, we have the first child winget. Okay, contains 4 columns. It's gonna be a grid layout. Okay, so put there the grid layout, columns. It's gonna be 4 columns. And let's go ahead and put the background color so that we can easily identify it. Use canvas. All right, so after we have that, we see that the first label was pop up, and after the pop-up, let me just put the size here. Size hint x is gonna be 0.3. This size hint x represent the width, okay, the width. So after we have the label, we have a checkbox. So the checkbox here, let's say it's not going to be active. So the first one is not going to be active. Let me just make sure I have this. So we're going to say active false. Maybe this is set false by default, but we're going to see that. And I'm just going to copy this. Okay. And the second one is going to be sound. And the sound is active by default. So let's go ahead and run this and see how it looks like. Okay, still error. So where is it coming from? Invalid indentation at the level of the grid layout. Okay, so all of these should be like this. All right. Perfect. Okay, so to adjust this, okay, so that it should be centralized, let's see how we can start by adjusting the width of all of these winglets. So we did that already for the label. The label, the width is 0.3, and let's see how we can fix the one for the chat checkbox. We're gonna put it 0.1, and let's say this one is gonna be 0.4, and this one is gonna be 0.1. Let's run it and see how it looks like. Okay, looks good now, but now the space here between this checkbox and the edge of our windows looks close. So let's see if we can add some padding here, and hopefully padding is going to work. So let's see, just here, I'm going to say padding, and let's say let me just use 50 for now, and let's see. Okay, doesn't look good. This, let's use 10 0. So I'm gonna remove this padding and probably just add another column here and add a last winglet. Let's just say label, and it's gonna contain no text, and let's put the size height x to be, let's say 0.1. okay, so once we have that, let's test it again, and it looks good now. All right. Okay, so next I'm gonna set colors for my checkbox. So I'm just gonna paste this, and it's gonna use this color. Okay, and yeah, we paste it as well. So once we have that, we can run it again and see. Okay, so perfect. All right, and once we add the other winglets vertically, this is gonna string. Okay, it's gonna string and fit perfectly. All right, let's see how we can go ahead and do that. Okay, so we are done with this first part, and we are the next part is this section that contains a button that allow us to select sound from our file explorer, and here it contains a label that's going to display the name of the selected media file or audio file that we're going to select. Let's see how we can fit this into this. All right, so for the second row, okay, since we're using a box layout and the orientation is vertical, this is the first this is the first winglet that we have in that vertical space, and the second one is gonna also be a grid layout, and I can just name it UI 32, and it's gonna contain 2 rows or 2 columns, sorry. And let me also put a height. So I'm gonna set the height to, let me set the height to, let's say 30 dp, and just as we saw before, for the height to work, I gotta make sure that the size hint y is none. And the first winget in this grid layout is gonna be a button, and the text here would be select sound, and the background color will be the same as we had for the previous one, so I'm gonna just put it here. I'm gonna try to reduce the width of that button, and let me just put 0.4, and the font size of that text in the button is gonna be 25. Okay, so that's the first, this is the first column. The second column is gonna be a label, and the text there is gonna be no sound selected, and the size hint X is gonna be 0.6. The font size is gonna be 18. Okay, and I think we can also set some background color here, so I'm just gonna put the background color. I have it copied somewhere, I have it saved somewhere, so I'm just gonna paste it here. And alright, so also the color of our text, okay, the color of our text is gonna be this, and I'm just gonna copy from where I stored it. Alright, so this is what we have. So let's go ahead and run this and see how it looks like. Perfect. And the last one in this box layout is gonna be this one. It contains two columns. The first one is the label and the second one is a text input. Let's see how we can fit this into this. Alright, so the last one here is gonna be a grid layout, and it has two columns. And let's set the height here to be 30 dp, and for the height to work, we're gonna set the size hint y to be none. And the first winget in this grid layout is a label, and here I'm gonna put the height to be the height width, the width of the label to be, let's say, 0.3, and I'm gonna add a color in there. Okay, the color of that particular label, not the color of the text. Okay, this is the background like we explained previously. And the next winget in here is gonna be the text input that allow us to put in text. Okay, and here the size hint X is gonna be 0.7. Alright, so let's see what this looks like. Let's go ahead and run our application. Perfect. So we can see here that this has been shrunk and it fits perfectly to in this space. Alright, so we have all of this. Okay, so the next winget is this one, and I'm gonna group these two into one. One of the reasons why I group this is to easily control their height. Okay, this is the best way I could do to control the height, but maybe there are better ways to do that. So what I'm gonna do here is that I'm gonna group these two into one winget. All right, so let's see how we can fit these two into this. All right, so I'm gonna use a grid layout, and here we're gonna label it UI4. And based on the design, this takes in 2 rows, and I'm gonna limit the height to, let's say, 90 dp. And for the height to work, I'm gonna set the height hint y to none, and the first part is gonna be the label. Okay, so the label is gonna contain the number of characters as we type in the text input. Okay, so for now I'm just gonna put something very simple here. Gonna have this, and let me just put something like this. Let me just say this is gonna be 27, because we're gonna limit the character to 27 characters. And we have the we're gonna set the height of this particular, next thing, we're gonna set the height of this particular label. Let's put it 20 dp, so it's gonna be shorter than the buttons that we're gonna have below. And for that to work, of course, we don't forget our hint y to none, and I'm gonna align this text to the right. So we're gonna see horizontal alignment. Let's say right. And for this horizontal alignment to work, we need to set the text size. Okay, we need to set the text size, and I'm gonna set it to be flexible. I'm gonna take the width of the label, and I'm gonna times it by 0.8 so that it can fit perfectly. And the height is gonna be none. The font size of this label is gonna be, let's say, 13 dp. Okay. All right, so let's test this and see how it works. So we can see we have this push to the right, and this also, we can see this overlaps. Okay, so we're gonna see how to fix this as well. All right, before fixing this, let's see how we can add the button, and we're gonna see if it's gonna fix it by default or we'll have to do something else. So the button is gonna belong in a grid layout with 2 columns, and the first column is gonna contain the button reset, and the background color here is gonna be red. It's gonna be red, and the next button is gonna be submit button, and it's gonna be disabled by default. Okay, until we validate all the input fields, then it can be activated. And the background color here is gonna be green. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and see if it actually fixed the other issue we had. Okay, it didn't fix it. All right, so we're gonna add the other winglets, okay, and see if it's gonna push this upwards and see if everything's gonna fit. Once we have added all the winglets, we'll see what we can do about this area here. So this doesn't look like what I would have expected, but let's see how we can fit this, then we're gonna figure out what the issue is. So this section here is gonna be a label, and it will contain the confirmation once we successfully submit an event into our database. So let's see how we can fit this part into this. All right, so this is gonna be a very simple label, very simple label, and the text here is gonna be empty for now, and it's gonna have a color. Okay, this color, and the color of the text, the color of the text is gonna be it's gonna be this, and the font size is gonna be 48. All right, let's take a look. Okay, this is a section, and we'll just go ahead and add this last section here. Okay, just to make sure that everything is pushed to the top. All right, so it's gonna be just a label with nothing, and here it's gonna be UI 5, and here it's gonna be UI 6. Okay, let's test it and see. Okay, still not looking good. There should be something wrong with especially this winglet here. This winglet this is 6, this is 5, and this is 4. There's something wrong with winglet 4. So this is winglet 4. Oh, and we can see the winglet 4 is indented into winglet 3. So this is where the issue is coming from. So let me go ahead and remove that. Remove the indentation. So they should be on the same line with this winglet 3. So this is what we should have. So this is winglet 3. We should have winglet 4, winglet 5, and winglet 6. So let's go ahead and test it and see if it fixes the issue. Hopefully it does. Perfect. So we have everything set. All right, so we are done with our UI. Let's start handling some validations. We'll start with this text input fields. This here represent the hours, year, the minute, and the second. So right now we can input any character, numbers, and letters. So what we want to do is to limit this to only numbers, and the maximum is going to be 2 numbers. And we want to make sure that it uses the French system, meaning that the highest number we can input is 23. That represents 23 heures, which is 11 o'clock. And we can use 00, that represents midnight, or we can use 17 that represents 5 p.m., or 07, that represents 7 a.m. Same thing here. The limit is going to be 59 minutes, and here the limit is going to be 59 seconds. So also at the same time, we can see when we press enter, it kind of like give a new line. So we want to make sure that it responds to the enter event. Once you press enter, the cursor is gonna move to the next field, and once you press enter, it's gonna move to the next field as well. So let's see how we can add these validations. So to add validation, we're gonna use our Python file, the add_reminder.py, and at the level of the class AddReminder item, we're gonna introduce a new method. Let's call it verify as value, and it's gonna take in the first mandatory argument serve and another argument called object. This object is gonna represent the winget that we want to verify. Okay, and the first thing we want to check is to make sure that it is greater than 0. Okay, so we want to trigger the validation once we start entering values. We start typing values into the input field. So if the len of object.text, so if we remember very well, each of these, for example, the label here has a text property. So that's what we're actually checking here. So we want to make sure we check the text, and if it is greater than 0, then we can use the try except to check some conditions. Here we want to make sure that the limit is 2 characters. So if the len of object.text is greater than 2, okay, then we go ahead and raise the value error. If it is greater than 2, raise the value error. The next one we want to check is if it is numeric and respects the limits. So for the hours, the limit is 23. Okay, so we're gonna say if int of object.text, this is gonna take care of making sure it is it can be the string can be converted to an integer. So why are we doing this? Because anything that comes from the winget in this property text always comes as a string. So we want to convert it or cast it to an integer, and if this doesn't work, it means that it contains some illegal characters there. Okay, so if the integer of this is greater than, let's say, 23, then we go ahead and raise value error. And once we have this, we can go ahead and cache the error, the value error. Once we cache the value error, it means that what? It means that the character that was entered is an illegal character. So what we do is that we go ahead and remove the character from the text. So we go ahead and say this. We remove that character from the text, basically. All right, so once we have that, we can go ahead and call this at the level of our label. So let's go ahead and identify it. We come back at the AddReminder, and I think that should fall, based on our design, that should fall at the level of the UI2, if I'm not mistaken. UI2. So we have this. All right. Okay. So we want the function that we just created to be triggered or to be called and when we start typing on this text input. And for that to happen, we need to listen to an event. We have the onText event that happens when when we type on the input field. So on text event, we're gonna call the verify time value, and we can see we need to understand where this function is coming from. Okay, so we have different options. We can use serve, we can use serve.parent, we can use root. Okay, all of this has their purpose. Now root is the best case here because we are our function is found at the roots of all of these winglets. If the function was found in this particular text input, we would have used the serve. If the function was found, the method was found in this box layout, which is a parent to this text input, then we would have said serve.parent.verifyTime value. But now that it is found in the roots, we're gonna say roots, and it's gonna identify it. All right, so once we have the root, we're gonna pass in serve. That's gonna represent this particular text input so that we can extract the text from it. All right, so before we do, I think we have some typo errors here. Verify, I think that should be it. Or let me just go ahead and copy this to avoid any typos error. Okay, even that first one was wrong. So let's go ahead and test it. And once we want to, I'm typing now characters, letters. Okay, it's not working because letters are not supported. And if I type in 09, we can see it enters. And if I want to add any other values, it doesn't accept it. Okay, I can do 23. It goes. If I want to do 26 or 7 or 8, it's not going to work. So that's the work of this guy. So this guy makes sure if there's any exception, any value exception that is raised, we remove the last character or the last number from the text. Okay, if we come back here, we can see this should be applied to the minutes and the second as well. So I'm just going to make this function or this method a generic function or generic method that's going to be used for all of these three to validate these three text input fields. All right, so what I can do is that I'll have to change the name of this. So let me just say validate time value, and it's gonna take in a time limit, and the therefore it's gonna be 23. So this is for the hours because the minute has 59 and the second has 59. So I think because the minute and the hours are the same, so I'm gonna put this therefore to be 59 so that only the hours is gonna change. And here I'm gonna put here time limit. Okay, I think that's all. If there's nothing else, let's go ahead and test this. So I'm gonna copy this name and change it here, and just copy all of this line and modify here and modify here. Here we're gonna pass in the time limit here for the hours. It's gonna be 23 so that it works perfectly. And here we're gonna say 53 is not gonna work. The limit is 23, and here we have 53, which is the limit, and 53, which is the limit. Perfect. All right, so the next thing we want to do is to make sure that once we press enter, it should not create a new line. So what we want is that when we create enter, the cursor should focus on the next field. Same thing here, when I press enter, it should focus on the next field. So how do we do that? Coming back to our Kivy language file, we have two things we need to introduce. Basically three things. So the first one is to make sure that we disable that new line once we press when we press the return button. So how do we do that? We can do it with the multi-line property, and we set it to false. So once that is set to false, we can click on the fields. So let's try it. We can say 4 and click enter. We can see there's no new line created anymore. Now I want to respond to this enter event. Okay, so how do we respond to that? We have the on text validate event that we can respond to, and what we want to do is that once this event is triggered, we want to send the cursor or focus the cursor on this next field. Now the thing is that we need to be able to identify this field. How do we do this? We can introduce IDs. Okay, so first I'm gonna introduce an ID here for the first text field. It's gonna be let's say time hours, and the next one is gonna be ID time minutes, and the next one is gonna be ID time seconds. So we can easily identify each of these winget through the ID. So here I'm gonna say once I click on this return button, I want the focus to go to the time minutes. So the focus is gonna be equals to true. So it means that once this event is triggered, the focus will move to this ID. All right, same thing here. So I'm gonna just copy these two and move it down here. Okay, set this multi-line to false, and once this event is triggered at this level, we're gonna move to the time second and set the focus to be true. Okay, so let's check it out. So here I'm gonna say let me say I want 2 p.m. I press enter, it moves to the next one. I say 30, I press enter, it moves to the next one. I can say 40 seconds. All right, so that's what we have. All right, so the next one we want to do now is to validate the label, and we want to make sure that when we type in, this is going to decrement based on the number of characters that we have here, and once we hit the limit, every other characters will be discarded. So let's see how we can fix this. So we move back to our Python file, and we're going to introduce a new method here. Let's call it handle label input. It will do basically two things. The first thing is that it's going to validate to make sure that we don't go above the limit, and the second thing is that it's going to set the label below, meaning that it's going to increment or decrement the label that indicates how many characters we have in this input field. All right, so we're gonna use serve, which is mandatory for all class method, and it uses a format. Okay, it uses a format underscore and a number. So we're gonna say label count format. Let's maintain that format. So it's gonna be this, and we can replace this. Is gonna be a placeholder, which is gonna contain the number. Okay, and the next thing is that we're gonna get the remaining length. Okay, after we have input some values. So the remaining length is gonna be let's say the maximum is 27, so it's going to be 27 minus the length of that label field. Okay, so if we come back to this, let's see where we can get that particular input. All right, so this is the input, is somewhere hidden in the UI 3. Okay, all right, so we're gonna introduce an ID here just to make sure that we can easily access this guy, and we're gonna call it label input. Okay, so for us to be able to have access to this ID at the level of the Python file, we need to make sure that we define it also above here. So we're gonna say ID equals to ID. So the ID variable here is gonna reference the ID that was set just below it. And once we go to our Python file just above here, we want to also define it here. Okay, and we have many ways we can do that. Kivy provides what we call properties, and I'm just gonna import it here from Kivy properties. Import. What I want to use for now is the object property, meaning that it's gonna maintain. Okay, it's gonna maintain its objects. If we are accessing the text input object, then it's gonna be text input object. Okay, if if we want but a string, we can use string property, which is going to represent string, or we have list property is going to represent list, and so on and so forth. So here we want to maintain the nature of the objects of that winget. So here we can say the length 27 minus the length of the text of that winget. So it's going to be serve dot label input dot text. So once we have the remaining value, we can check if length remaining value is lesser than 0. If it is lesser than 0, okay, we make sure that we discard every characters that will be added. Okay, so we're gonna say serve dot label input dot text, serve label input dot text. We discard it, discard the last character. Okay, else if everything is fine, we are below the limit, then we want to just make sure we decrement the count. Okay, and if we go back to our Kivy language file and identify where our text is, and I think we can easily identify it. Can we easily identify that? And we can go to this quick layout. Okay, I think this is it here. So this label needs to be incremented or decremented. So for us to be able to identify that, I'm going to add an ID, and I'm going to call it label input count. And also, since I want to access this in my Python file, I'm going to move it right up here. And also at the level of the Python file, I'm also going to add it here, object property. Okay, so if everything is if our text is, if the number of characters that we've input, if the number of characters that we inserted in that label is below the limit, then we want to just make sure we decrement the label input count. So we're going to say serve.label input count dot text equals to we're going to use this format. Okay, so label count format, we add the length remaining. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and add this to our winget here, to the input field. So I have it with the ID label input. So yeah, I'm gonna respond to the onText event, and I'm gonna say root dot this. Okay, so let's see how it works. So yeah, I'm gonna say hello world. We can see it decrements. Hello world, welcome to this. So we can see anything else that I type is discarded. Okay, now let's do something here. When we are already at the limit of 5, we want to turn this into red so that it indicates that you are almost hitting the limit. So in order to do that, we can come back to our Python file, and at the level of the else, we can say if the length remaining is lesser than 5, then we want to go ahead and just tweak the format just a little bit. Okay, tweak this format just a little bit. So we want to say the format, the new format is going to be equals to, we use our f string and we set the color here. Let's set the color to be red. And here we're going to put a placeholder and add our dash. If the length is greater than 0, else nothing. And we're gonna add the value and close the color. Okay, so if you look at this, we can see we have the color, we define the color here, and we want to introduce this minus sign, but if it is 0, then we don't need the minus sign anymore, right? And here we have a placeholder for the remaining number, okay? And we close the color here. So this is how we can add color in Kivy. All right, so for this to work, we have to make sure that we set the markup property of the winget we want to add this color to. So we can identify the winget. So at the level of the label input count, we're gonna say markup, and we set it to true. Once we have that, we can start the application again, and this is the end of the game. So we can see now it's, as it hits 5, it reduces, it changed color to red. All right, so let's make sure that at this level, once we have provided the seconds, if we need to, we can press enter and it's gonna move the focus to the label. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna identify that particular input label with the ID input label, and this is it. Yeah, so we want to make sure we set the focus to this one, and the focus will come from the time second, and time second is 1. So we want to make sure that works. So first thing, we have to make sure we set our multi-line to false. Then we respond to the onText validate event, and we say label input dot focus equals to true. And let's go ahead and test that real quick. And once we say 1:12 o'clock 30, and let's say 50 seconds, we press enter and it moves to the label. And here we can say this is just a test for perfection. All right, next let's go ahead and handle this button. Once we click on this button, we should have a pop-up. Okay, so from the finished product that I showed in the beginning of this video, we saw that when we click on this button, we have a pop-up that enables us to select the days we want the event to be triggered, and also if it should be repeated. Okay, so let's see how we can build that. Okay, so back at the level of our Kivy language file, we are going to introduce the pop-up just below here. Okay, so I'm going to have it just down here, and I'm going to call it this pop-up, and it's going to inherit the pop-up winget. Okay, so for now I don't have any non-UI logic that I want to introduce, so I'm just going to have them here. Okay, all the UI logic, I'm going to have them here. So once I'm ready to add some non-UI logic, I'm going to move this to my Python file, okay, and inherit it. I'm going to move this to my Python file and reference it here. So for now, I want to make sure that when we click outside the pop-up, it should be closed. Okay, so we have to set the auto dismiss equals to true, and the title is gonna be this, uppercase this, and let's see the size hint, we're gonna have 0.9 and 0.7. so this is gonna be the I think the height and the width, or the width and the height. I don't really remember. Okay, so the first guy here is gonna be a crit layout, which is gonna contain all the winget that we have in our pop-up. Okay, so we will have 3 rows. From the finished product that we saw that we can easily design this with 3 rows. The first one will be the repeat button, the second one is gonna be just that horizontal line, and the third one is gonna be all the days that we have there. Okay, so the spacing will be 15 and the padding will be 15. Okay, so the first winget here is gonna be a box layout. The orientation will be horizontal because we need the label repeat and checkbox. So we're gonna say horizontal, and we want to set the height. So for that, I want to make sure that the size hint y is none, so that I can set the height to be 20 dp, and I'm gonna just put the background color here. Okay, so that's going to be the background color. So the first winget we're going to have in this box layout is going to be the label, and the text here will be repeats. The width will be, let's say, 0.3. So the next winget here will be the checkbox, and the checkbox will not be active, of course, and the size hints here will be the width will be 0.1, and we're gonna add some colors here as well. So here we're gonna make it a little bit dark, okay, and the next one is gonna be just an empty label, just to occupy that space. Okay, so let's go ahead and make sure this one works so that we can see the pop-up as we progress. Okay, so we're gonna copy this and we're gonna come at the level of that button. Let's look for that button. It is called this, with this greater than sign, and we can see here on release we are listening to the on-release event. We listen to the on-release event, and when that happens, we call our pop-up. Okay, and how do we do that? We need to import something to do that. We need to import the factory. So import factory from Kivy factory dot factory. Okay, so this helps us to call the winget, and when we come back to this on release, we're gonna say factory dot, we call it, and we open the pop-up. Okay, so let's see if this works. Hopefully I won't have to. Okay, I was already saying I would have to fix things. I always forget to remove this from you know, Python has already taken my head away. So yeah, when I click on this, we have this pop-up, and yeah, we have the title, and yeah, we have this repeat checkbox that we can click to make sure that it repeats. Let's see how we can add some space here. Maybe we're gonna set the width of this particular label because it seems to push the winget to the left. So here we're gonna say oopsie, where is that pop-up? So yeah, we're gonna say the winget here, size hint x is gonna be, let's say, 0.6, and let's try again. Okay, all right, so it looks good now. All right, let's go ahead and add the other things. The next thing we want to add is this horizontal line. So the advantage is that we are using Kivy MD. Okay, so we have this encapsulated in Kivy MD app. So we can use Kivy MD properties here. All right, so for the horizontal line, I will use the Kivy MD because it is easier, simpler. Okay, so I'm gonna say MD, MDD, it's MD divider, MD divider, MD divider, and I'm gonna set the height, the width, sorry, I'm gonna set the width to this, and the term divider color. We're gonna use custom, so we have custom and we have other keywords that we can use here. And for the color, I will use this, and the position, so just make sure that it is centralized. Okay, so we're gonna make it centralized 0.5 and 0.5. okay, so let's see and make sure it works perfectly. So all right, so we can see this is a horizontal line here. So let's go ahead and add the remaining parts. Okay, so the next part will be contained in a grid layout, and it's gonna have 7 rows. Basically we have 7 days, okay, from Monday to Sunday, so we're gonna have 7 rows for that. And the padding is gonna be 15, and the spacing will be 15. Okay, so the first I'm gonna use box layout for each of the days. So the days is gonna be represented by a label and the checkbox. Okay, so the orientation here will be horizontal, and the first one is gonna be the label. Here, let's say Monday, and the size hints, that is the width, will be 0.6. And after we have the label, we'll have the checkbox, and let's say the size hints x is going to be 0.1. And I'm going to have the color here set to this, the color of the checkbox. And at the end, I'm going to have just an empty label that's going to occupy the last space there. So the text is going to be empty. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how this looks like. Okay, so we have something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and add the remaining days. Let's do that real quick. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy this and replicate throughout. Okay, so let's test this and see to make sure that everything works well. All right, so this is what we have. You can go ahead and select and unselect. Perfect. Okay, so let's see what we can do with this. This kind of like looks like it is string somehow. And I guess it is because of this empty label here. So we have to also set the width of this empty label. So let's go ahead and do that. We have to start at the beginning here, and here I'm gonna say size hint x. Let's put it at 0.3, and I'm just gonna copy this and add it to the rest. Okay, so let's see if it fixes it. All right, perfect. Okay, so let's make sure that when we select here, okay, and we go out of the pop-up, it should fill up this space. So right now we just have placeholders here. So let me just go ahead and remove that real quick so that we don't get confused. Okay, so here we have a placeholder here. So I'm gonna remove that and run my application again. And once I come here and I select the days, okay, it should fill this space. And also I want to make sure that it remembers what we selected, so that when I click here again, it should pre-fill what we selected before. So let's see how we can do that. So to do that, we go to our AddReminder Python file. Okay, so we want to start adding non-UI logic. So I remember I told you guys that I will move this particular winget from here to the Python when we start handling non-UI logic. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna copy this name and come here. I'll create a class and call it this, and it's gonna inherit pop-up. Okay, so here, just like we did for the tab panel, we're gonna import from Kivy.urx pop-up, import pop-up, and this is gonna inherit pop-up. Okay, so once this inherit pop-up, I don't longer need this inheritance here. Okay, it's gonna take directly from this file. All right, so the idea here is that I'm gonna have a Python variable here. Sorry, I'm gonna have a class variable here called choosing days. It's gonna contain a list of all the days that we will select. So for a startup, it's gonna be empty. Okay, and I'm gonna have a method called this pop-up check that is gonna be triggered once we click on those checkbox. So it's gonna contain the is active property, okay, and this is gonna be bool, just to make sure that when we click on the checkbox, this will indicate if we are activating or deactivating the checkbox. And the next one is gonna be value, that's going to contain if we are activating for Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. This is going to be a string that represents those days. And once this function is triggered, it's going to check if we are activating or deactivating that checkbox. If we are activating the checkbox, then we want to make sure that we add the day that we are activating in this choosing days list. So we're going to say choosing day list dot append, going to append the value. Else, if we are deactivating, then we want to make sure we remove that particular day from the list. Okay, perfect. So once we have that, we want to make sure that we are able to restore back these values. So when I say restore, this is what I mean. Like if I click here, okay, so once I click this and I click this and I click this, it means that the chosen days will be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So once I go off this and I come back, it should be able to restore back this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay, so how do we do that? I'm gonna have a method here called restore days check, and it's gonna contain the value as an argument, and it will check if that value is found in these chosen days. Okay, so return value in this chosen day. Perfect. So we have our two method. Let's see how we can integrate these two methods in our Kivy language. So we're gonna go ahead and identify the different checkbox. Okay, so let's say this is the first checkbox for Monday. Okay, so here we're gonna listen to an event called on active. Okay, so this event is triggered once we click on that checkbox. Either we want to activate or deactivate it. This is gonna be triggered. Okay, and once that is triggered, we want to get the days pop-up. We want to activate the days pop-up check. Okay, remember this days pop-up check is found in the roots. Okay, in the roots. So we want to activate this and pass the serve active. Okay, it will indicate if we are activating or deactivating the particular checkbox, and we're going to pass in the name of the label that is that represent this checkbox. So we can see here we are at the level of Wednesday, so we're gonna put here Wednesday. Okay, all right, so let's test it with Wednesday and see if it's gonna work. So before we do that, I want to restore it as well. So to restore it, I'm gonna say active. So the value of active is gonna be root restore days check, and I'm gonna pass in Wednesday like this. Okay, so once once we open the pop-up, this active is going to run and it's going to try to restore this value. It's going to check if Wednesday is found in the chosen days. If it is found in the chosen days, it's going to set this active to true. If it is not, it's going to set this active to false. And once we click on that checkbox, it's going to trigger this method to run, so that it's going to add this Wednesday in the chosen days if we are trying to activate it, or it's going to remove it if we're trying to deactivate it. So let's see if that works. We will start our application, go to our days, and Wednesday, we're going to click on Wednesday, try to go off of it and come back, and we can see Wednesday is selected. So we can see, all right, Wednesday is selected. So let's go ahead and do it for all the other days checkbox. All right, so let's see if that works. So Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. All right, perfect. So now the next thing is to make sure that once we select here, it's gonna fill up the space with the number of with the days that we selected. All right, so at the level of the button that opens a pop-up, we have our label that will contain the days that were selected in that pop-up. And normally what you would do is to identify this with an ID. One way you do it is to identify this as an ID and try to access it at the level of the AddReminder.py. But because the selection of days come from a pop-up, it might be a little bit difficult. The best way I saw to handle this was to define this as a custom label, meaning that I'm gonna just give in a name here. So let me call it days label, and I'm gonna define this in my Python file, okay, just below here, class this, and it's gonna inherit the label. So I'm gonna import that label here, uix.label, import label, and it's gonna inherit it. Okay, so once I have this defined, the next thing I want to do is to make sure that I'm able to access this particular winget. And the strange thing with Kivy is that you may want to access this winget when it's not yet published on your UI, so it's going to return none. So for that, in order to prevent that, I will define a class attribute here called instance that's going to represent the instance once this one is published on the UI. And in order to have this instance, I'm going to define a method called onKivyPost. So once Kivy posts this particular winget, it's going to provide me with the instance, which is basically the serve. So here I'm going to say this label dot instance equals to serve. So once that happens, once this particular function is called, I will have access to the instance that was published on my UI. Okay, so once I have that, I'll go to my days pop-up and I can introduce a function here. Let me just call it set days label and access the instance and identify the text in that instance. And here I'm just going to use the normal join to join them, this pop-up, and choosing this. All right, perfect. And so what happened is that this method is called when we each time this days pop-up check is called. So here at the end of the after the if else statement, I'm going to call this particular function. Okay, so let's see if it works. So once I have this, so we can see here, and I'm gonna unselect this. You can see this, and I'm gonna select this. You can see this. So I'm gonna select everything, and we can see this. Perfect. All right, so the last part would be to handle this button. Once we click on the select sound, we should have access to the file explorer of your system. You should have access to the file explorer of your system where you can select the sound that you need. So let's see how we can handle this. All right, so let's go to our Kivy file, and we are going to create a new pop-up because it's going to happen in a pop-up. And at the end of the day's pop-up, we're going to create a new pop-up here. Let's call it file picker pop-up. And here it's going to inherit pop-up for now, and we're going to change it with time pop up. And we are going to put the title of that pop-up is going to be select an audio file, and the size hint is going to be 0.9 0.9. okay, so all of that's going to happen in the box layout, and the orientation here is going to be vertical. So the first thing we want to do, which is very important, is to have our FileChooser chooser icon view. Okay, this is what will open the file explorer. Okay, and I'm gonna just give in an ID. Okay, because I want to be able to access this. I'm gonna give in an ID of FileChooser, and filters, just to make sure that we only accept MP3, and we can also accept I don't know, waves, .wav, and also let's also accept .org. Okay, so after that we're gonna have a button, and the text here is gonna be select. Gonna help us to select the particular audio file that we want to use, and the size hint Y is gonna be none, so that we can set the height. So let's say the height here is gonna be 50. Okay, so let's call this and see how it is displayed. So we're gonna move to the button. So I'm gonna search for it, select I don't know, select sound. Is it okay? Yeah, on release it's gonna be factory.this.popup, just like we did with the first one. Open, sorry. All right, so let's see how it is displayed. So we're gonna go here and click this button, and we can see it opens my file explorer. So all the files that are in my system, I can see them here, and I can navigate. So I'm gonna try to navigate here. So go to user, Apple, and let me come back. What am I doing? Apple. So desktop and beats. These are my sounds, my personal sounds, and here I can select. Okay, so once I select this here, I can click on select, and it's going to select this particular audio file. So let's see how we can go ahead and fix this, because this button is not working at this moment. All right, so at the level of the select button, where is that? Let's go back to the pop-up. At the level of the select button, I'm gonna put in on release here, and let me call a method called select file, and roots here will trigger anything that comes at the level of this winget here, line 356. So this is a non-UI logic, so I'm gonna move this to my Python file, and so that I am able to define this particular method there. So I'm gonna copy this and just down here. Let me put it alongside this other pop-up. So I'm gonna say class this pop-up. Okay, let me put pass for now, and back on my Kivy language file, I'm gonna remove this so that it accesses it, or it references it from my Python file. Okay, so right here I'm gonna define the method select file. What it's gonna do is that I need, from this file or from this method, I need to have access to this particular winget here, so that I can know if something has been selected or not. So we can see here I gave it already an ID, and for me to have access to that ID, I have to come here and define it here. Okay, I'm gonna define it here, and it's gonna access. So this variable is gonna reference this particular ID here. So once I have that, I can come back to my Python file, and here I'm gonna say this is gonna be an object property. Okay, so that I can have access to it here. So I'm gonna check if something has been selected from that file. So I'm gonna say serve.filechooser.selection. If anything has been selected, then I want to get the selected audio file. It's gonna be serve.filechooser.selection, and I get the first value. Okay, so once I get the first value, I can just print it here just to be sure what has been selected. Okay, and I'm gonna dismiss it. Okay, so once we press the select button, it's going to be dismissed. So the pop-up will be dismissed. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and try this to see that it works. So I'll go here and not here. Select sound, and from the users, Apple document, and not documents. So let me go to bits, and let me select this one and press select. So I can see on my terminal, this is the absolute path of the file I just selected. Perfect. So now what we want to do is that we need to display all of this, but we cannot display all of this because it's too long. So I'm going to just select the file name and display it on that placeholder, on this placeholder here where we see no sound selected. Okay, so let's go ahead and extract that audio file and display it here. Okay, so we're gonna use the same method or the same technique that we use here. Okay, so we're gonna identify that particular label. So let me say no sound selected. So this is it, and I'm gonna give it a very simple name. I'm gonna call it select that sound label, and gonna define it in my Python file. Let me define it just below here. Class this and inherit label and instance, just the same thing. And on Kivy post, I'm going to set the selected sound dot instance equals to serve. Once I have access to that, I can come back up here and set it here. Okay, so I can say this dot instance dot text equals to whatever it will be. So here I'm gonna say selected audio, and I'm gonna strip it. Is it split? I'm gonna split it at the level of this backslash, and we will select the last item, and let's go ahead and run it and see and make sure it works. So here I'm gonna select the file from document bits, and let me just select this one so we can see it right here. Alright, so let's add something cool here. And at the level of this file explorer, if we come back to where I selected my file, my audio file, we can see here that this is actually smart enough to know that when the name is longer than a certain limit, it's create a shortcut with dots, okay, dots in between like this. So let's see how we can have this in our application as well, because if the file name is longer than this space here, it's going to be impossible for us to display everything here. Alright, so I have the functions for this already prepared because it's going to take a lot of time. So I have this prepared already. I'm just going to explain what it does. So here we're just going to define some constants. We have here the dot length. This is the number of dots that we're going to have in between those characters, and this is going to be the number of characters we're going to have after those 3 dots, and this is the limits that we want for each audio file. So we set it to 18 characters. So this line here extracts the file by splitting it and getting the last item, and we use our partition to split at the last dot, and this gives us the file name, the dot, which is not necessary, and here the extension. All right, so here we determine if the limit has been reached. So we subtract the length of the file, we say the length of the file minus the limit, and we check if it is greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, then we determine the length that we want to remove. It could be the length or the number of characters that went above the limit plus the dots, the number of dots that we want, and the character that we want after the 3 dots. Else we just want to have the number of characters that went above the limits. Okay, so once we have that, we reformat everything, or we compile everything to create that beautiful shortcut that we saw in our File Explorer. So once we have that, we add back the extension and we add a nice color to it. Okay, so with that in place, we can go ahead and instead of having this here, we can go ahead and call this method and pass in the selected audio variable. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this and see if it's gonna work as expected. So I'm gonna select back that same file. Hopefully it is longer than 18. So let me look for that, this one. Okay, so we can see the color is displayed here. Okay, it's not well formatted because of the markup property that we did not set. So let's go back to our AddReminder Kivy language file and let's look for that. And this is it. Yeah, we're gonna add markup, set it to true, and we try it again. So we're gonna do this, and from here to here to here and here, and we're gonna look for that file, and we can see clearly that it has reduced the length and added the 3 dots, exactly like we wanted. So the next thing we want to fix at the level of this File Explorer is for our application to be able to remember the last folder that we use, because we can see each time we click on this button, it takes us back to this main, I don't know how they call it, is it home directory? It takes us back to this directory. So we want to make sure that if we lastly selected this file, okay, so once we close this and come back, we should be, sorry, when we close it and come back, we should be in that in the folder where we lastly selected. So let's see how we can implement that. Kivy comes with some storage that we can use, and one of the storage, the one that we're going to use in this case, is going to be the JSON-like storage called JSON store. Okay, and we're going to import it here, and I'll explain how it works alongside. So here we're going to say from kivy.storage.json store import JSON store. So once we have this imported, we are going to set the file so it works with a JSON file, and the JSON file is going to contain whatever we are going to store, we are going to save in there. All right, so let's define it here. Let's say the store is going to be, because this is going to be a constant, let's say store equals to JSON, and we are going to use the base path to get to the working directory. Okay, and from there we are going to locate the file. So I would like to have the file outside my source here, and in here I'm going to create a folder called store, because we're going to have many of those stores, so we're going to call it stores. And here in here we're going to have the file that we want to use, so let's create it there. Let's call it file picker last folder, and it's going to be JSON. Okay, it's going to be the last folder that we have selected. Okay, when we come back, we are going to use it here. So it says string base path. From there we go to stores, and from there we call the file name file picker last folder.json. Hopefully that's the name. Let me check that real quick. Okay, so once we have this defined, we're going to make sure that when we select the file that we want to use, when we select the file that we want to use, it's going to set the folder, okay, the folder where we selected that file, so that we can store it in our storage. All right, so at this level, after we have set this label, we go ahead and say store. Since it is a JSON, okay, it has the put method, and we're gonna say this will be found in the folder. This is like a key, okay, and in that key we're gonna define the path. Okay, so the path is gonna be called serve.FileChooser.path. So the path property of this winget that was defined here, that represents this winget here, okay, it has the path property that holds the path where we selected our file. So we are going to store it in our JSON, and this will be like a key, and it's gonna have this other key value pairs inside. So once we create it, you're gonna see how it's gonna be represented. So let's go ahead and do that so that we can see exactly how it looks like. And we're gonna just select a file here. Let's go back to this, and yeah, let's just select this one. Okay, so once we have that, let's go to our JSON file, and we can see, okay, so this is a key, and here we have another JSON, and in the key path we have the path that where we actually selected our file. Now we want to make sure that our file chooser icon view remembers where we lastly selected the file, and it has a property called path that we can use to set the path. So we are going to set the path here, and for that I'm going to define a function or a method here that will permit me to basically return that path. Okay, so I'm gonna call it get last path. Okay, and it's gonna return, let me return the store gets, gonna look for that folder, and I'm gonna look for the path from that folder. This will be possible if the store has the folder, okay, key. Else, if it doesn't have it, then I'm gonna return the working directory. Okay, so for that I'm going to import OS. In order to get that, I can still use the pathlib or path from pathlib, but here I'm just going to use OS, and coming back here we're going to say else os.path expand user and pass in this tilde. Okay, so with that defined, we can go back to our Kivy language file and reference it here. Okay, so let's see if it works. So we can see we are at this level. Okay, so it remembers, and if we click on let me come back. If we click on battle and we select a file here, for example, and we go back, it's gonna remember that we were in battle. Okay, perfect. All right, 2 more to go. Okay, and what we want to do here is to be able to activate our submit button if all the required fields are filled. For example, the hours is going to be required, and either of these needs to be activated. So if you have none activated here, we won't be able to activate the submit button. Okay, so either sound or pop-up or both. Okay, and for the selected sound, later on we are going to we are going to set a default sound, so that if the user does not select a sound here, it's going to use the default sound. So this is not necessary, and here we need to make sure we have a label here. Okay, so the required fields are, we have this as, we also have the days here that needs to be selected, we have either of these, and we have the label. So let's see how we can implement this. Now in our Kivy file, we need to make sure that we have assigned IDs to all the winget that we need to use. Okay, so we start with the R. Okay, so we have set this already, and for the days, this doesn't have does it have an ID? It doesn't. So here I'm gonna say yeah, I'm just gonna put an ID here. I'm gonna call it selected days. And the next one will be the label. I think the label has been defined. The label input has been defined. Okay, so that's all we want, right, for now. Okay, so let's make sure we have exposed the selected days. We go here on top here, we expose it, and at the level of our Python file, we also make sure we have it exposed here. I think we are left with two, the pop-ups. Okay, so let me just look for them. Pop-up, I think we have the pop-up and sound. Let me just look for sound. Okay, so we have this checkbox. Okay, so here we're gonna say ID, gonna call it pop-up alarm check, and for the other one it's gonna be pop-up, no, this is gonna be pop-up alarm check, and this one is gonna be sound alarm check. Okay, let's expose both of them. So we're gonna come up here, say pop-up alarm check, it's gonna be pop-up alarm check. Sound alarm check, it's gonna be sound alarm check. So I'm gonna copy these two, and back here I'm just gonna paste them here and replace this part with this. Okay, so with this I'm gonna create a method. Let me just have it here and call it try enable submit. And alright, so first I want to check this to make sure that this one has at least a length of 2. So we should be able to type here and have at least a length of 2. And I'm gonna do it this way. If the length of serve label input is represented by this guy, label input, and greater than 2, and I have my and let me just make it like this so that I can indent it, and I have my and logic here. The second one will be to make sure that at least this field has some text. So because in this case, if we select something here, it will be displayed here. So this is what we use to check to make sure that the user actually selected some days. So we're gonna say and serve dot is represented by selected days. Hopefully, let me copy this because I'm starting to text. Okay, so make sure it has that. And the next one is to make sure that this hours, the input that represent the hours, is filled up. So let's do that. Serve dot time time. So let me just, I don't know why it doesn't auto complete, so let me put this and so that it should be able to. Okay, so the time hours is not actually exposed here, and if we come back here we see that it is not also exposed here. So let me go ahead and do that. Time hours, and copy this, save that, and we can have it here. Okay, so I'm gonna say time hours dot text, and the next one and the last one is gonna be these two guys here, these two checkbox. So we're gonna say we're gonna use any. Okay, and the first one is gonna be the pop-up check if it is active, and the serve sound check if it is active. So I guess we all know how the any works. So it's gonna return true if any of these guys is true. So we can see from the documentation, return true if bool of x is true for any x in the iterable. All right, so if this condition is true, then we want to go ahead and activate the submit button. So we will add an ID to the submit button. So let me look for it. Submit. So here I'm gonna add an ID. I'm gonna call it submit. Okay, and I will expose it up here and here as well. And if this condition is true, then I will say serve.submit.disable equals to false. Okay, it means that we want to enable it. Else, we're gonna say serve submit.disable. Oopsie, disable would be true. Okay, hopefully there's no typos here. So I'm gonna copy this and move to my AddReminder Kivy language file, and I will look for all of these components that we want to test. The first one I'm going to look at is the time as. Let me look for the time as. And on text validation, or not on text validation, but on text, as we are typing, we are going to first verify the time value. Then we are going to run this to see if we can already activate the submit. So we're going to do the same thing for the others. So the next one is adding label input. Okay, right here. And okay, so what else? We have a pop-up. We have the pop-up and the sound that we need to also handle. So let me see. Sound. And here at the level of the checkbox, we are going to use onActive, and we call root this. Okay, we have also the pop-up. So yeah, onActive. I think we also have those labels. Okay, so the days label, and we are just going to have on text here. If something changed in this label, okay, if a text is introduced or removed, then we want to also try to see if we can. We want to also see if we can activate the submit button. So we're gonna have it here. Okay, I think that should be all. So let's come back to our Python file. So we can see here I don't know what I did here, but this should be equals to and equals to as well. And let's try it again. So I'm gonna say 12 o'clock, and I'm gonna select here Monday, and yeah, I'm gonna say this is a good one. We can see it's activated already. If I disable this, see, if I uncheck this, we can see this, and I check it back, we can see it's fine. If I remove uncheck here, again it's gone. And if I remove here and I add here, it's now more. And if I add like this, okay, so we have done a great job at this level. Alright, so the last part is for us to handle the reset. So when we click on the reset, it should be able to reset everything here. Let's see how we can do that. So for that, we're going to need the ID of all the items that we need to reset. At the level of the time, we have already the time as. We will also need the time minutes and the time second. Okay, so let's add the time. I'm just gonna try to group them. Okay, time minutes and time seconds. Okay, so just here I'm gonna create a function. I'm going to call it reset. So let me go ahead and start resetting everything. So the first one I'm going to reset is the label input. This is going to be like this. The second one is going to be the time as. The third one, time minutes. The fourth one, time second. Then I'm going to reset the pop-up alarm. So active is going to be false. And I'm going to reset the pop-ups, the sound alarm. By default, it should be true. And the next one is going to be the selected days. So we are left with two. The first one is going to be for the days pop-up, because when I click this is activated based on the information that is found in the choosing days list. So we want to reset that as well. So we're gonna say days pop-up dot choosing days is gonna be empty. And also for the sound, once we select the sound, we can see we hear the name of the audio. Once we select an audio or a sound, the name of the audio appears here. So we want to reset this as well to the original text, no sound selected. So let's go ahead and do that. Selected sound. We're gonna move to the instance, then access the text, no sound selected. Okay, so with that, I will go back to my Kivy language file, and at the level of the reset button, I'm gonna say on release. I will call it there. Okay, so let's go ahead and try it. So let me just put 19 year 36. Gonna select yeah, and I'm gonna put it like this, and this is for testing. And when I click reset, I should have everything. So oops, this did not change, so probably I have some typos errors. So I'm just gonna make sure that I don't have any typo error there. This is time minutes, just to make sure that time minutes is well defined. Okay, and back here, time minutes, did I use it well? Okay, I missed the text, time minute text, and yeah, time second text. Okay, let's try it again. So okay, perfect. So that's it for the AddReminder UI. I hope you enjoyed it. In our next video, we will connect this to our SQL database so that when we click on the submit button, we'll be able to save our data or our reminder event in the database. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share in order to support the channel. Code with Eno. See you in the next video.